Okay, the first activity we're going to do today is we're going to fill out this chord grid for a 12 bar blues in C major. You need to fill the chord grid out before we move on to the next step, which is recording a 12 bar blues in GarageBand. So this is what the chord grid looks like. You should have this in front of you. It was given to you as a handout. You're just going to use an ordinary pen to write this out. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a keyboard obviously so I can show you what it looks like. So we need to be able to fill out chord 1, chord 4 and chord 5 for a 12 bar blues in C major. This writing out of triads is a sheet that you got in the last lesson. You're really going to need to have finished to be able to do this next step. So the first of all, what we need to do is we're going to work out what chord 1 is in C. Writing out the C major scale in this fashion, so C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Underneath that, we've written the notes of the scale underneath it. So note 1, note 2, note 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Note 8 is the same as note 1. That's why I've got 1 in brackets. So C is here and C is on the end. They're both the same pitch, or the same note, but different pitches. They're an octave apart. All right, so to get the triad out of a C major scale, we need to be able to use notes 1, 3, and 5, and that's why they're in bold. Okay, C major or chord 1 is always quite easy. So chord 1 will start on C because it's note number 1. So when we go back to our blues grid here, chord 1 is a C chord. We know by looking at this particular scale and the way that we've highlighted it that the notes for the C major triad or the chord 1 triad in C are C, E, and G. To get those notes, we've had to go first note, skip a note, then select that note, skip a note, select a note. All right. So we write those out. It's C, E, and G. Notes of the triad, C, E, and G. We're going to find now that we've got to go across again to another chord 1. That's going to be C. And of course, the notes of the triad are C, E, and G. So on and so forth. So another chord 1 there, which is a C chord, and a chord 1 there, which is a C chord. Now we've got to go down to chord 4. Chord 4 in the key of C. Let's go back to our writing triads worksheet. Chord 4 in the key of C stands to reason that if chord 1 started on C, then chord 4 will be the 4th note of this scale. So there's note 1, there's note 2, note 3. This is what the first note of chord 4 is, which is F. So there's note number 4, chord number 4. Back to your blues grid or your chord grid. Chord 4 is an F chord. There it is. Now what we need to do is we need to be able to find out what the notes of the triad are. So just the same as when we used chord 1, we selected chord 1 or note 1, then we skipped a note, we selected a note, skipped a note, and then selected a note. The same thing will happen for chord 4. So we know that the first note of chord 4 is F, then we skip a note, then we select a note. So the second note of the F chord, or the chord 4, is going to be A, then we skip a note, and then we select a note. The third note of the chord is C. So we need an F, an A, and a C. Oops, back to our grid. So the notes in chord 4 are F, A, and C. Again, we've got another chord 4, so we choose F, and then F, A, and C. Then what you need to do, we're going to go back to chord 1, which we know what chord 1 is, and another chord 1, we know what the chord is and we know what the notes of the triad are. Then down the bottom here, we need to know what chord 5 is. So just the same as chord 1 started on the first note, chord 4 started on the 4th note, it stands to reason that chord 5 will start on the 5th note of the C major scale. So the 5th note of the C major scale is G. That's our chord 5. After that, given that you know that to select a triad, you've got to select the first note of the chord, skip a note, select a note, skip a note, select a note. I'm going to let you work out what you think the notes are for chord 5 by working that one out yourself. So use the same principle by selecting, skipping, to be able to find out the 3 notes in a G triad, which is chord 5. Once you've worked that out, you're going to put in a chord 4, which you've already got, and then you're going to put in 2 bars of chord 1, which you already have. So once you've done that, you can fill the grid out, fill the chord out, you'll have all the chords and all the notes for the triads, and then you can move on to beginning the recording of your 12-bar blues in C in GarageBand.